How do you actually make running fun? It's a question people have been asking for decades. Some have turned to podcasts, others run clubs, others drinking. But what would happen if somebody who can hardly run a 5K used one of the fittest footballers on the planet as their running accountability partner?
This actually might be the stupidest project I've ever done, honestly.
The plan was to track Arsenal captain Martin Odegaard's distance run week by week and attempt to match it throughout the course of an entire Premier League season. It's very reasonable to ask, why? Well, like a lot of people, for as long as I can remember, it's been a dream of mine to one day run a marathon without ever actually really working towards that goal. But after a particularly boozy summer, I was finally feeling inspired to give it a proper go. There was just one problem. I don't really enjoy running. I was hoping that by following this makeshift plan, I would actually have a goal that I wanted to work towards each week, and by the end of the season have run a few hundred kilometers, feel better physically, and finally fulfill that dream of running a marathon.
This is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. I've made a mistake.
So the premise is pretty simple. Track how much Odegaard runs in each Premier League match week and set that distance as my goal for the week. Using this as a makeshift training plan for a marathon that I would run in May. I chose Odegaard based on a list that the Premier League released on total distance covered by players the season before and looking at who would most likely be playing in the most similar role this season. To work out how far I'd actually need to run each week, I divided their total distance covered by total minutes played. If Odegaard plays an hour, then I need to run 7.5 kilometers that week.
So on Saturday, Martin Odegaard ran roughly 11.35 kilometers. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that in one go.
I really had no idea how this was going to end.
It's day one. Let's see how we go. Day two. Week two. Odegaard played last night, so looks like we're doing another 11 kilometers or so.
Now, anybody who's ever worked towards a goal knows that the beginning is usually the most exciting bit.
Week three, got 12 kilometers to do.
10 rounds into the Premier League season, and I was actually feeling pretty good about myself. I was running a couple times a week, and it wasn't feeling like as much of a chore as it had at the beginning.
And I'm finding myself actually wanting to go out for a run, which is just really strange, but I guess it means this is starting to work. What I am concerned about, though, is when it starts to get a little bit darker and colder.
And, yeah, the concerns were valid. Unsurprisingly, the colder it got, the less I wanted to run and the more I wanted to do quite literally anything else.
Okay, so with the coldest day of the year last night, and now it's actually really starting to become a pain in the ass to do this. I just can't be bothered.
Meanwhile, the Premier League entered its busiest period of the season. Okay, we've made it halfway through the season, and I've sort of compiled how it's been going, and I've absolutely fallen behind and am now 25 kilometers behind Odegaard in terms of what we've run in total throughout the season, which actually isn't that bad. But generally, so far, I don't feel that different. I mean, I guess I'm only 4 months into this challenge, but I am wondering at what point am I going to start to feel any noticeable difference?
It is quite literally -3 right now. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Now, the next couple of months were a mixed bag.
It's only taken me 6 months, but I've finally run the distance that Odegaard would run in a game in one go.
Good weeks followed by bad weeks.
I'm so over this. What's the point?
But just having some form of accountability, that number, that accountability partner, just kept me showing up. Suddenly, it was the end of March. I was still behind Ødegaard, and I actually didn't really feel that different to how I felt in September, October. What's more is the marathon at this point was only 6 weeks away. And they say in marathon training, you want to be hitting 50 to 60 kilometers of running a week. I hadn't done more than 20 in one go at this point. I sort of made the decision there and then that if this was actually going to happen, I was going to have to step things up.
So we're 7 kilometers into this run. I'm weirdly feeling really good. I'm thinking of going for the half marathon.
Just run a half marathon for the first time ever.
Got about a month until the end of the season. Run 28 kilometers and I think I'm actually broken. I think I've actually overdone it now.
So there we were 2 weeks before the marathon, having finally run further than Ødegaard, physically feeling quite a lot better and having even run 28 kilometers in one go, although not exactly easily. But there was still one big challenge ahead, the marathon. So myself, my sister and my girlfriend made our way north to run the Rob Burrow Leeds Marathon. Going up with them made the whole weekend so much better and definitely helped settle the nerves at least a little bit.
Feeling really, really nervous, but hoping just when we start that the adrenaline just kicks in.
This was the day where we were finally going to find out if this makeshift plan was an adequate substitute for marathon training. After cutting it very fine, getting to the start line,
10 minutes till it starts.
We were off. 5 kilometers in, I was feeling really strong. I decided to just take my time, go slow, not burn myself out too early. 10 kilometers in and I was just enjoying the amazing atmosphere of the day. By the time we were halfway through, I was actually surprised by how okay I actually felt. It definitely wasn't easy, but the goal of finishing was feeling more and more realistic. And then I reached the hill. Now, I hadn't realized this before, but the marathon route in Leeds is hilly. And that's underlined by a giant 4-kilometer hill that hits you when you're 2/3 of the way through the course. This was the point where everyone seemed to hit the wall, and I was definitely included in that. I was now running further than I ever had before in my life, and all I could think about was maybe substituting proper, well-researched and proven methods of marathon training for a running accountability partner you've never actually met wasn't a good idea.
This is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. I've made a mistake.
I made it to the top of that hill, but with about 10 kilometers left to go, I'll be honest, I felt defeated. And then I got a bit of help. First from the crowd, which only got bigger the closer we got to the finish line. And then from the runners around me, notably these two legends who reminded me what doing this was really about. The Leeds Marathon is named after a rugby league legend from the area, the late Rob Burrow. And the race's motto is to run for a mate with a mate. I'd spent so much of the last 9 months running by myself, fixated on this goal. I'd forgotten that for most runners, the time you clock, or even the fact that you've finished, doesn't necessarily matter. What really matters is having a reason to keep showing up. I'm definitely not going to sit here and pretend I've accomplished something that thousands upon thousands of people before me haven't. Running a marathon in 4.5 hours isn't really something to brag about. But crossing the finish line, celebrating the achievement with loved ones, and then raising a glass to just showing up, that's an experience that felt worth bragging about.